Hello there, I'm Mr. Vlad and you're watching a Neverwinter guide video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to get through Valindra's tower. The first thing you need to know is that it requires 1600 item level to enter. The first thing we'll talk about is how the trash enemies are cleared, as well as a few tiny details about where to go. After clearing the very first group of enemies, you'll get to see a needlessly long cinematic about going to Thay. After that, as a tank, you can either choose to pull one group of enemies at a time, or if you can handle it, pull just about everything up to the first gate. As a damage dealer, you just wait and let the tank pull the enemies. If he just runs past the first group of enemies, follow him from a safe distance and let him pull as much as he plans on pulling. Once you see him stop and start hitting the enemies, that's when you can start doing your damage. The reason you are waiting to do this is so that enemies group up nicely so you can AoE them down quickly. In the room after the first gate you open, 2 gelatinous cubes will spawn. Your group can either choose to ignore them and just run to the interaction object to get to the next area, or to kill them. If you're killing them, as a melee damage dealer, be careful, the cubes will do a large amount of damage. Dodging when the red indicator appears will usually let you avoid the damage from the cubes. I prefer always killing them because they end up following your group through the dungeon anyway, so you'll probably have to deal with them later on. Also, if someone dies, they might have issues getting past the cubes, since the only spawn point before the last boss is way back at the beginning. A word of caution, right next to the cubes there is a treasure chest. It's a mimic, so if you don't like getting your face ripped off, don't touch it. Right after the slimes, the next group of enemies include a set of portals. As a damage dealer, you should focus on destroying the portals as quickly as possible, so that your group doesn't get overrun by enemies. As a tank, you should just focus on keeping the enemies off your group so they can destroy the portals. After destroying the portals and opening the next gate, there's another section of the dungeon where the tank can decide between pulling group by group or just doing one massive pull. As a damage dealer, just wait and see what the tank does. If he runs past the first group, follow it at a safe distance, and when you see the tank start fighting, you can start doing your damage. After going through the next gate, you have to kill these ranged enemies. After killing the first group, another will spawn. Once you kill the second group, you open the gates on the side using the lever that's in the back of the room, like you can see in the video. After opening the gate, you can either rush past the next group of enemies to interact with the object that leads you to the first boss, or you can kill the small group of enemies. Either way, you'll have to kill them because they will follow you through to the boss area. The first boss, Shatterspine, is really easy to kill. There are no special mechanics, you just burn him down. As his health diminishes, small groups of enemies will spawn. As a tank, just keep these enemies off your group. As a damage dealer, see if your group's damage is low or not. If it is low, it's a good idea to clear out the adds. However, if your group's damage is decent, you can usually just burn down the boss and then kill the enemies afterwards. Once the boss and enemies are dead, you can open the last gate, which leads you to the big pile of enemies before the final boss. Again, the tank decides whether he wants to pull all of those at once or if he'll pull it in segments. As a damage dealer, wait to see what he does, and when he starts standing still and fighting enemies, you can start doing your damage. A word of caution, as a melee damage dealer, you can get smacked around quite a lot in this last big pile of enemies, so be careful. Now, by far the hardest part of the dungeon for a person doing it for the first time is the Valindra boss fight. It consists of 3 phases. The first phase is the easiest. You simply run around after her and beat her down. She'll put down a zone that you have to get out of, otherwise it deals a decent amount of damage and also drains all of your action points. She'll also teleport around the room randomly. Once you bring her down to 70% of her health, she will teleport to the center of the room and become untargetable. She will also yell, "Now you die!" because she's Count Dracula in disguise. As soon as you see her move to the center like that, start running towards the edge of the room. Once you are at the edge of the room, start running clockwise around the edge of the room. The reason you are running along the edge of the room is because unkillable ghosts will spawn, which deal damage to you when they are near you. The ghosts lock onto random players and slowly move after them. They move slower than a player can run, so it's not a problem to outrun them. However, you can see in the video that large red indicators show up. These will one-shot pretty much anyone that isn't a tank. The way you deal with them as a damage dealer is that you stop right in front of them if there's no ghost near you, and once the damage animation goes through, you can safely go through the red indicator. However, if there's a ghost right behind you, you should use your dodge to get through the red indicator and then keep running. After this intermission, the second phase begins. During the second phase, Valindra will shout, "You're going nowhere!" and then a claw will grab a random player. As a damage dealer, it's your job to kill the claw as soon as possible, because it can and will kill people if it holds on to them for too long. So the second you hear her yell, "You're going nowhere!" look around the room and see who is clawed and help them. As a tank, the only time you should move to kill the claw is if you see nobody else is doing it, so pay attention to what your group is doing. Most of the time, there's at least one person that knows what to do. Another thing Valindra does in the second phase is teleport to the center of the room and shout, "Rise, my undead minions!" When she does that, objects called soul casks will spawn at the edge of the room. After some time, these casks will open and spawn enemies. There's two ways to deal with this mechanic, and it will vary from group to group. If your group has enough damage, you can just keep focusing Valindra. However, if your group doesn't have enough damage, every person should try to run to the casks and mash the F button to interact with them to break them. Interacting with them is much quicker than just damaging to destroy them. Once Valindra reaches 30% health, she will teleport to the center, become untargetable, and start the same intermission phase with the ghost like she did at 70% of her health. She will also despawn any of the soul cask enemies that might be left over from the second phase. The intermission phase is exactly the same as the first one, it just lasts a lot longer. Again, just go to the edge of the room and run clockwise to avoid the ghosts and avoid the red zones like we mentioned earlier in the video. After this intermission, Valindra will enter her final phase. She will spawn soul casks again, however she'll spawn too many for the group to destroy, so everyone should just focus on killing Valindra as quickly as possible. And that's everything you need to know about Valindra's tower. If you learned something from the video, leave a like, it takes a second of your time but helps me out a lot. If you enjoy this type of guide content, subscribe, because I'll be making more Neverwinter guides in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and bye.